So you want your kick streams to be looking better. So today I'm going to be going over the recommended settings of how you should set up your kick streams to have the best quality possible. So first, let's go over Kick's recommended settings on their support page. So here on their support page, it's kind of just going over a disclaimer about making sure that your maximum upload speed does not exceed your bit rate. So here they have a couple of options of what kind of encoding settings you should have. So to start off, the X264 encoding options, this is basically if you're going to choose your processor as your encoding. It's pretty much giving just the recommended settings that you'd have on your OBS. So typically everybody's going to be streaming at 1080p. The rate control you should be having is constant bit rate. I know some of you guys have variable bit rate, but to ensure that you always just have the best quality, it's better to have a constant bit rate compared to variable bit rate, where the quality of your stream will be going up and down just depending on the speed of your upload. And just as a little disclaimer here, it says Kick supports a bit rate of up to 10,000 kilobits per second. Then it says please ensure to check your internet connections, maximum upload speed. So in my case, since I have a Nvidia graphics card, I have a 4090, I'm going to be using the Nvidia encoder that they have built into OBS. And if you have an AMD card, you can just scroll down here and it'll show you pretty much the same similar settings that you should be having. But to kind of go back to what the Nvidia encoder's settings should be. So it says to be streaming at 1080p, constant bitrate, anywhere from 1000 to 10,000 kilobits per second. Keyframe intervals, the preset should be set at slower. Tuning should be at low, ultra low latency. Multipass mode is single pass and profile is main. So these recommended settings are just if you want to have the safest way and most insurable way that you will be streaming to Kick. But here I have my personal settings that most people don't know that could actually improve the quality of your streams. So for my personal recommended settings that you should be having is obviously your encoder. If you have a graphics card, a very powerful graphics card, whether it be AMD or Nvidia, just always have it where it's processing your graphics card over your CPU, so it'll take up less resources when streaming or if you're playing a very high demanding game. Rescale output, this is optional for me since I'm streaming at 720p. I just have it rescaling to that output. Then for the encoder settings, obviously like we mentioned, so constant bit rate, and the bit rate you should be going at is basically what you should do right now is go to speedtest.net, run a speed test and see what your upload speed is, and pretty much go 60% of what it is. You should always be going at least 50 to 60% of what your upload speed. So for me personally, I have an upload speed of 12 megabits per second or 12,000 kilobits. And so I'm streaming at 6,000, which is pretty much half of it. But it doesn't hurt to go a bit over it. Just don't exceed anywhere from 90 to 95% of your upload speed, because during streaming, this could affect some things, like maybe you're trying to watch a video or something on your phone. You're using internet on your phone or something, it could affect the quality of your streams there. Because we have set at a constant bit rate, and you do something on your phone, or maybe you open up a tab to watch a video along with your stream, little things like that where it might require some upload speed could definitely affect the quality of your stream. So like I said, always have it anywhere from 50 to 60% compared to going 90% of it or even fully, because it could really, at worst case scenarios, crash your stream. Next up, we have keyframe intervals, and the best way to describe what this is and why it's usually recommended you have it at 0, or Kick tells you to have it at 1. To explain this as much as possible, what I want you guys to do is put your mouse at the very left of your screen and just quickly swipe across your screen. And tell me how many mouse cursors did you see between going from the left to the right. Since what essentially is happening is that your rendering device is trying to give you a path or an idea of where the mouse was in between those frames. So from, let's just say frame 1, my mouse was at the very left, and then frame 2, it's at the very right. What it's going to do is it's going to render those frames in between where you could see the mouse going across. And so what keyframe intervals does for your streams, this is very important where you have high motion games like if you're playing Apex Legends or Warzone, you're obviously going to be sprinting a lot, you're going to be aiming down sights, explosions going to be going off. All these little motions and graphics going on are going to require a lot of processing power. And so having it set at 0 is going to help a lot to relieve a lot of your system's resources. But personally, I just have it at 2 because this is probably the max you should go for. You shouldn't really be going over 2, just at least 1 or 2 is what you should always be going for, because this will ensure that one frame going to the next frame will look as crisp as possible, very sharpened, and you won't have that blurry effect of, let's say you're aiming down sights and then you swipe across and you obviously can tell that there's a bit of motion blur. And so this just allows for better smoothness in your streams and less artifacting, less pixelated frames going on. And then next for presets, it's going to show you a list of how fast you want your system to be rendering your stream. And obviously by the preset settings, it says that P1, the fastest, is going to give you the lowest quality, versus P7, the slowest, is going to ensure the best quality possible. And for me, I just have it at P6 because that way it doesn't take up too much of your resources, and again, doesn't slow down any of your processing power when streaming. And here I'll kind of show you guys a graph of what it really does. Like, there's not really much of a difference if you have it set to P6 or P5 or even P7 for that matter, because there's barely a difference in what you'll see if you have it set to any of these presets. Here's just kind of like an overview of like all the settings that there possibly is in the presets. So as you can see, if you were to have your processor as your main rendering device and you have it set to very slow, it's probably going to ensure you the best quality possible. Versus you could see that in P6 versus P7, they pretty much have an identical score. There's not really much of a difference you're going to be seeing in game, especially when you're playing a high movement game like Apex Legends. The next setting we have is tuning. This is pretty much similar to look ahead, which is if you're playing any other high motion games, the moment that you turn really fast or that some sort of scene goes on, what it's going to do is going to buffer those frames at whatever setting you have possible. So as of right here, we have it at high quality, and the other two are just low latency versus ultra low latency. So with high quality, as soon as some sort of motion goes off, our rendering device is going to make sure that we see that sudden scene in high quality, in the highest quality possible. Compared to if we have it at low latency versus ultra low latency, it's just not going to render it as sharp, and it will take less of a resource effect on our rendering devices. That way, if you wanted to have a bit more of a smoother experience, it's up to you. I would just have it at either low latency or high quality. I wouldn't really recommend using ultra low latency. And then for multipass mode, what this does is that when a new frame comes into effect, what it's doing is that it's sort of, your rendering device is scanning the scene and sort of making it as sharp as possible. And the settings are single pass versus 2 pass, quarter, and 2 pass full. And as I was explaining about rendering, is that if it renders one frame, it's gonna go render it once. It's gonna go through a single pass of rendering. Versus if it renders it twice, it's probably going to be looking a lot sharper. It's kind of like if it's going through a filter, you can definitely tell the effect it's going to have. And for me, I just have it at quarter resolution, because the difference between quarter and full resolution is that, as I showed you in the graph, is that you won't see much of a difference if you have it at either. But since quarter resolution, as our multipass mode in the preset number 6, you can see that it actually scores just a bit higher than if we have it at full resolution, because it's taking a bit more of our resources. But then again, it's still very close to the score of 62. So again, your stream won't really tell much of a difference whether you have it at full or quarter, but there is a significant difference if you have it at single. And then for profile, this is basically our CPU working behind the scenes at how highly prioritized do you want the encoding to be. So right here we have it high. We wanted to make sure that it's effectively speeding up the process of all these rendering going on. If you have it to main or baseline, you're definitely going to see a bit of a blurriness effect because it's not going to be using any of these settings as fast as possible. For look ahead, we just leave it unchecked. For psycho-visual tuning, this is more of a Nvidia setting than it is a CPU processor setting. And this is pretty much what I was talking about with tuning, is that whenever we have high motion graphics going on, it's going to pre-render those frames to make sure it looks as sharp as possible. For GPU, we leave it alone, and max buffer frames is very similar to what we have to keyframes. So what this essentially is that every 2 frames within our 60 frames a second that we're going at, is that at least 2 of those frames are guaranteed to look as sharp as possible. So what this will essentially mean is that at least 30 frames out of our 60, because 60 divided by 2 is obviously 30, is that at least 30 frames of those is going to look as sharp as possible, and then the other 30 to fill up the 60 is just going to fill those frames in between to where it looks as smooth as possible and there's not much of a blurriness effect going on. Now there is one more trick I wanted to show you guys, that even though it says that Kick supports up to 10K bit rate, is that you can actually tune this up all the way up to 12 or even 15K. And the way to do it is basically start your stream, leave it running for about 5 minutes, maybe just have your intro screen going on while you wait for your chat and your viewers to start gathering up. Then immediately go into your OBS settings, go to output. If you have a very high upload speed, just turn this up from 6 all the way to 15. Just hit apply, and then you're going to start to see your CPU usage at the bottom right of your OBS screen. You're going to see that it's going to be using a bit more resources, and the bit rate of your stream is going to be slowly going up from 6 all the way to 15, and it's going to be looking as sharp as possible. Now don't go over 15 because this will essentially just crash your stream and possibly your OBS software. So just keep it at 15 if you want the quality of your stream to look as maximum as possible. Well guys, that's essentially it. If you found this helpful, be sure to give this a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more of this, if you thought this was really helpful. And be sure to tune into my stream just to see the results of all these settings going on. And leave a comment down below. Maybe it helped you, maybe it not. Any feedback is supported. And I'll see you guys in the next one.